Okay, let's start the show. I was literally just Googling to see if it should be good evening or good afternoon, but it says that you say good afternoon until 6 p.m. So, good afternoon to everyone on the call, and welcome to Valley Line Southeast LRT Virtual Spring Open House Update for 66th Street. Special welcome to all the residents of 66th Street who are joining us today. Thank you so much. And this presentation is presented by TransEd and the City of Edmonton. And so just a little bit of housekeeping here. Even if you are in listen-only mode, you'll be able to submit a question or comment anytime throughout the duration of the presentation. So if you are on your phone or your tablet, if you go to the bottom of the screen, you'll see a Q&A, and if you tap on that, you'll be able to submit a question or comment. And if you're on your desktop or laptop, you'll just have to exit full screen mode and go to the top left corner, and if you click on the Q&A right there, then you'll be able to submit questions and comments. We'll be taking questions and comments for the duration of the presentation that will be answered by the people on the call who I'm about to introduce at the end of the presentations. And once again, this presentation is being recorded and will be available on our website and on our YouTube channel. So on the call today, we do have from the City of Edmonton, Michelle Ponich, who's from the Community Relations Department. Michelle has a quick update to give here.
There we go. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. As Isabel said, my name is Michelle, and I'm here on behalf of the City of Edmonton. We realize that you may have expected ETS and parking management to be with us today. Unfortunately, they are unable to be here. Should you have any ETS or parking related questions, please feel free to reach out to ETS via 311 or parking management via email at epark@edmonton.ca. That's EPARK@edmonton.ca. Or if it's more comfortable for you, please ask your question during the Q&A portion of today's presentation, and we'd be happy to take it back to the prospective areas at the city and get an answer for you. Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle. And on the TransEd side of the world, we have Jan Dumont, who is the Alstom Project Director. We have Dallas Linskog, who is the TransEd Communications Manager. And the voice that you're hearing is me, Isabel Onaba. I am the Communications Coordinator with TransEd. And without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Dallas.
Thanks, Isabel, and welcome everybody to the call this afternoon. A special welcome to also those of you that found us on our YouTube channel through our website and other means and social media. As Isabel said, we're recording this, so we're grateful that you clicked on the link and that you're interested in the project as well. So welcome you guys to sit down and relax for a little bit. Maybe you've got your dinner ready to eat. Great time to do that. We're going to be talking to you here probably for about an hour. Kind of depends on how many questions come to us. We're happy to answer as many come, and we'll take as long as it takes to get through them as well. So this, as a quick highlight on your screen, you can see a map of the alignment for Valley Line Southeast. Of course, today's presentation is going to focus a lot on what happens in the south end of the project in the Millwood, 66th Street, 28th Avenue area. But just as a highlight, I mean, we're talking 13 kilometers of project here of new track for the Valley Line. A good portion of that is at grade, runs along the street level, which is purple on the map. And the blue sections in the middle and a little bit up near the river valley is the elevated portion as well. And then, of course, we have a tunnel and we have the signature Dewatenow Bridge crossing as well at the river. And we'll show you some photos of that and speak to that in a bit. A couple other little highlights, the connections that are in green on the map. Davie Station, which is just along 75th Street there. That's a park and ride and a transit center that'll hold 1,300 cars. Kind of a feature along the alignment. And the other one up at the top of the map in green is the Churchill Connector, and that will be the connection to the Capital Line and the Metro Line, which is through a new building that we're constructing in Churchill Square. And that building houses stairs, elevators, and escalators for that connection. This is a public-private partnership with the City of Edmonton. It is a P3 project. We're very proud to be partnered with the city. TransEd itself is made up of 4 different companies: Bechtel, Elliston, Alstom, formerly known as Bombardier, and also Fengate. You can go ahead to the next slide, Isabel. So today's presentation, we're going to talk to you on 3 main topics, and then we'll have a question and answer session. I'm going to take you through a construction update, starting with the broad overview of where things are at along the entire alignment. And then I'm going to focus a bit more on the area on the south in Millwoods. I'm going to turn it over to Jan at that point. He's going to take you through some of the really interesting train testing and commissioning activities that have begun, especially in the south. I imagine a lot of you have seen that happening now already. So he'll walk you through some of those details, the step-by-step process it takes to get these trains fully tested and making sure they're running at top condition. Then we'll turn it over to Isabel. She'll come back on here and she's going to take you through some of the safety messaging and we'll educate you on some of the unique aspects of this low floor train system and get you prepared to interact safely with this train, and also encourage you to share that information with your friends and families and help us as we educate the general public. And then of course the question and answer. So make sure you're asking questions through the online text ability as we do go through the presentation. We'll save them all to the end, but we really look forward to answering those questions. We'll do our best to answer them, as we give you the details, but certainly if there's more clarification that you need or a question that we haven't addressed, we'll certainly talk about it at the end. So with that, I'm going to dive right into some construction update. So starting with Davie Station. This is a picture obviously from above. You can see the station is in, I'm going to go back one, Isabel. I think I may have some more pictures here coming up, but yeah, now I realize why you did that. Go ahead then. I'll come back to Davie Station in a second. Apologies for that, folks. Starting at the north end of the project, down in the river valley, this is the Dewatenow Bridge. We get a lot of questions about the progress on this bridge. I can tell you that the concrete structure, as you can see in the photo, is effectively done. We are installing, or we have installed, the rail across the bridge, as well as the overhead catenary system, the OCS poles that support the power cables that provide power to the train. You can see that in the left picture a little bit if you look closely there. So that work is well underway. We've been pulling cables through conduits and the ductwork across that bridge all winter, and we're at the point now where we're just making a lot of those final adjustments and terminations of those cables. The other thing that's happening at the bridge here that's important to note, and you can see it just beginning in the picture on the right, is we're installing the steel structure beneath the bridge that supports the shared use pathway. And that will provide the pedestrian and the cyclist crossing over the river when it's complete. So that work is going to continue through this summer to get that trail under the bridge constructed. It's really important to understand the connections to that underslung pedestrian bridge. Obviously, we need to reestablish the Louisa McKinney Park and Henrietta Muir Park on both sides of the river. And as you can see in the photo there, those are currently our construction laydown yards for the tunnel and for the bridge construction. So that work is going to start to demobilize, or that those yards will start to demobilize this spring. And that will allow us to begin some of the final earthwork movements on those slopes to finalize some of the riprap placement that you see there around the pier, but also just some of the other geotechnical related activities on the slope as well. So we basically start near the top of the slope and we dig our way down. And as we come down, we also do the landscaping, reforestation, and naturalization activities and work our way to the bottom of the slope and then back ourselves out, kind of like painting yourself out of a room. That will also allow us to do the trail connections in the river valley, which allows the connection then for pedestrians to cross that bridge. All of that work is expected to take the duration of the summer and into the fall. On to the next slide. I think now we'll go over to the Davie Station. Is the signature elevated station located along the elevated portion of the guideway. You can see a couple photos on the right there of that. This building is well underway, as you can see in the photos. We're doing some of the final touches on the inside, the painting of the walls and the basic beautification type activities. You can see the exterior is virtually complete now as well. A lot of the exterior glass glazing is installed. The art glass, as you can see in the photo there, is installed as well. On the inside, you can see the wood roof structures in place, and it's really coming along this building. We're at the point now where it's, again, some of that last electrical communications cable termination type activities that are going on. Also, just pointing out the art class there. If you get a chance, it gets later in the day now that we're into the spring and summer. But in the evening, when the station is lit up from the inside and those lights are shining through that art glass, it looks really fantastic. So I encourage you, if you have the opportunity, to take a look at that when you're driving down 75th Street. Best viewed if you're heading south. All right, on to the next slide. I think we're going to head now into 66th Street and talk a bit more specifics. So this is the Grey Nuns stop along 66th Street. As you can see, it's well underway, and this is really indicative of all of our stops along the alignment. There are 11 in total. As you can see, the low floor LRT system provides for these platforms to be much lower profile. They're not much taller than the height of a curb or a sidewalk, and you can see that in this photo here. The stop shelters at all of our 11 locations are installed, and we're in the process now of completing some of the trim around those, the soffit and the fascia, all that kind of stuff that goes on those structures. You can see in this photo, which is also similar in many other stops, the shelters and the glass and the doors have been installed. Just want to point out, if you haven't heard, these shelters along the Valley Line Southeast are heated, which is unique to LRT in Edmonton, the first of heated shelters of its kind. So really proud to be able to offer that to Edmontonians as well. Jan will talk about it a little bit more in detail, but you can see some of the overhead catenary poles and cables installed here as well. And one final thing to point out, because it will become a bit more valid in the discussion as we move forward, is in the picture on the right, you can see some of the LRT train signals. And I just want to point out the difference. And we'll do our best as we're talking about some of the safety aspects today and the signals to distinguish between train signals as opposed to traffic signals. And it's important to keep that distinct in your mind when we're talking about that stuff. But I'll let Jan and Isabel talk about that in their sections. A couple other things to note before we move off of this slide. Actually, no, you go ahead. Yeah, that's fine. Onto Roadworks is potholes are a favorite challenge for us this time of year. We are responsible for road maintenance along the entire 13 kilometers, which includes snow removal and includes potholes. So this time of year, as I'm sure you've heard in the news, and I'm sure if you've been driving on the streets, you can see lots of potholes. So we have crews that are out there every day inspecting the roadway, doing their best to keep up with these very quick to develop at times potholes, and we're doing our best to keep that as safe as possible for road users. Obviously, what you see in the picture on the left is the northbound lanes of 66th Street, which we completed last year. Those ones, of course, aren't developing any potholes, but we do have some areas of roadway that is not yet been resurfaced or reconstructed, and those are the ones where typically we are seeing potholes develop. But know that we are aware of them, and we're doing our best to keep up with them as well. Some other things to point here in downtown is signal timings. So there's been some concerns raised and brought forward to Transnet about signal timings along the intersections at 66th Street. So specifically 38th Avenue, 34th Avenue are where most of the concern is coming from. It's important to understand that as we do the testing and commissioning, these signals aren't necessarily in their final configuration from a phasing and detection standpoint. So when a signal is fully installed and the road detection loops, or in some cases, you'll see cameras above detecting the cars, those signals function a lot more efficiently. But because we're in a state of flux right now, as the installation is continuing and the testing and commissioning is continuing, those signals in 66th Street are activated on a cycle, basically a default setting. And that doesn't necessarily allow for the most efficiency. It's absolutely safe. Continue to follow the green and the red lights, of course, but you should expect at times to have to wait perhaps one additional cycle for making a left turn movement particularly. And that's just the nature of the beast, unfortunately, until we are fully integrated with the testing that's going on with the train signals as well. And that is happening actively, and Jan will talk about that shortly. I want to talk a little bit on this slide, but just before we move on, about the White Mud Overpass. The White Mud rehabilitation work has been ongoing for the last couple of summers. That has proven to be a bit of a challenge. That structure needed a fair amount of work, and of course that's in our contract, and we want to make sure it's done perfectly. So we do have about 4 to 6 weeks worth of work to continue this spring, and that'll be happening very shortly through May and the early part of June is the current schedule, weather dependent always. and that is primarily on the northbound lanes. So you will see a very similar configuration of traffic that you saw last year. It will vary a little bit, but we will do our best to keep the traffic flowing. The left turn lanes will still be, left turn movements will still be permitted, although they'll be combined at times with the through lane as well. Very similar to what you saw last year. All right, I think we can move to the next slide then, Isabel. I want to talk about landscaping briefly. If you haven't heard, we're installing an awful lot of it along the alignment, and it's one of the best features in my mind that really just shows completion, and it really brings the beautification and to life, and the work that's been done by our landscaping architects in conjunction with the city, and to make sure that it's set up in a way that it really looks well in the summer, but also looks really good in the winter. And you'll see some of that as the vegetation develops a bit more, and you can see some of the different colors that are worked into even just the leaves and the foliage. The landscaping in Area 6, which is what we call 66th Street, by the way, is basically complete. There's a couple things to do in and around the landscaping on the west side of the roadway, but the bulk of the landscaping and the planting beds on the east side of 66th Street adjacent to the track is now complete. Of course, we'll keep an eye on that through the summer, make sure that those plants are establishing well, and if they aren't, we have to come in and replace them. But we're expecting to see lots of growth with that vegetation this summer. I should mention there are 10,000 trees along the entire alignment that we're planting, and over 85,000 shrubs, and roughly almost 22,000 square meters of seeded and sodded areas as well. So a tremendous amount of landscaping ongoing. And I kind of touched on the River Valley focus for naturalization and reforestation. That's a big part of our landscaping this year as well. All right, I think we can go to the next slide, Isabel, please. I want to talk a little bit about public art along the alignment. And I imagine you've seen what's shown in the photo here, as well as some of the other stops that we're going to show you some photos of in a second here. A lot of the public art is integrated with the glazing or the glass around our stop shelters. This particular stop shelters are at Millwoods. These were created by an artist by the name of Peter Morin and Tanya Willard. And symbolically, these connect transit users to the stories of the Papachase indigenous territories, which are the native lands for the Cree in Treaty 6, but specifically in the Millwoods area. So that these artists have been engaged by the Edmonton Arts Council, and I just think they're fantastic, really beautiful to look at, gives a lot of visual interest for people that'll be waiting in those shelters and waiting for the next train to arrive. The next one I want to show you is the Grey Nuns and the Millborn Woodvale stops. So you can see here a little bit different style of art. We have some of our shelters that have the art and sculptures mounted to the roof of those shelters. Starting with the Grey Nuns, these are sculptures that will be installed and they reflect the diversity of the Millwoods community surrounding the Grey Nuns Hospital. And the artist in this case is Karen Hofat Lee. And she's a Canadian visual artist and designer, and she works primarily in 2- and 3-dimensional media, and she's created bands of motifs inspired by cultural textiles and patterns in this case. On the the Millborn and Woodvale stops, the artist here is created by a group of artists. Sorry, I apologize, got that incorrect. This is created by the Laboratory for Integrated Design. That's what it is. And they are out of Calgary. In this particular case, there's a couple of artists that have done the sculpture by the name of Jason Johnson and Guy Gardner. These sculptures explore the use of pediments as an ancient communications device and architectural feature, transforming them into a 21st century form. So I'm excited to see what those look like in the real world. These are just renderings, of course. A lot of this type of art won't be installed until closer to opening date, and that's just to preserve, make sure that it doesn't get damaged or vandalized effectively. So we'll wait till kind of the last minute to install some of these elevated portions of art. So I personally think it's fascinating to see the art along the alignment, and I encourage you to take a look at the Edmonton Arts Council website, and from there you can see all of the different public art that's being installed along the alignment. So with that, I'm going to turn it over now to Jan and let him take you through some of the train testing and commissioning. I think you'll find this really interesting. You're going to get some good pictures of the trains and a better understanding of what it takes to test the hundreds and hundreds of kilometers of cable and the thousands of connections that I'm sure Jan's going to talk about here shortly. Over to you, Jan.
And there I am. There you go. So yes, I'm gonna talk, and I can talk forever about those trains and the amazing electronics and cables and safety features and the top-notch devices and options that you have on them. So what you see there is actually a picture taken from inside an LRV at DOMF. And want to emphasize that we received the 26th and last LRV in February, early in February, in Edmonton. So the whole fleet is in Edmonton. And as you can see there on the picture, we have a lot of space, a lot of room, a lot of lights inside the vehicles. So that's a very, very important milestone. Those LRVs were completely assembled in Canada in our Kingston factory in Ontario, and they all fit in the operation and maintenance building that you see here on the picture. The building has been completed, and we can store all the vehicles inside the facility. So it gives a very, very good handle on the maintenance. It's not weather dependent and really helps on the operation side of the project. So as you see, those trains can be coupled, and so that's attached together. You see there on the top left picture, we have a coupler that gives the link between the two LRVs, and those. So I'll use trains, LRVs, vehicles. It's the same thing. I'm referring to those LRVs that you see here, those trains that you see on the picture. So they can be assembled together, and they have a nominal capacity of 275 passenger. You can load more. And so it means that when you have two of them together, it's more than 500 people going at the same time. So that's quite a heavy capacity to move people around. Again, talking about coupling the trains, if you wanna have some insight, if we were to couple all trains together, the length of that big train would be more than 1 kilometer. It would take you more than 13 minutes to walk from one end to the other with all the LRVs that are in Edmonton right now, and that you will see on the alignment on 66th Street, because we are starting the testing and commission. So overhead catenary system, OCS, I might refer to it as OCS. Again, I apologize in advance for all the acronyms that we use. We are deeply into the project, and I will make sure that I try to not use many of those. So OCS system, it's what is providing the power to the trains. So OCS stands for Overhead Catenary System. Those are the cables that you see on the poles. They are strung on the OCS catenary poles. There are 530 poles on the alignment. They are all erected, and we have on those poles some very heavy copper cables that are conducting and transmitting a 750 DC volt power to the trains. The link between the train and the catenary is made by a device that's called a pantograph that will raise up from the train. You don't see them here on the picture, but you'll see them on the alignment. So as I was saying, and again, those catenary cables, they are alive. It's energized. It's a very strong current that goes through those catenaries. So Isabel will talk about safety shortly after. And maybe you can go to the next slide, Isabel. So train testing, that's what you are seeing right now on 66th Street. So you see train, some are moving, some are not moving. We are doing what we call static and dynamic testing of the train. Bear in mind, those trains have all already been tested completely out of the factory, because we do have a test track in our factory in Kingston. So they have all been running and they're working fine. But we still need to conduct a whole lot of testing and commissioning. For you to understand, there are more than 700 kilometers of cables along this alignment, and I'm not even talking about the lighting or the traffic. Remember, Dallas made the distinction between the train traffic and the train signaling and the traffic signaling. I'm not considering the traffic signaling, just the system of the train running. So 700 kilometers, it means that every cross section of the alignment, you get 50 to 60 cables everywhere on the alignment. So it's not the 6 or 7 cables that you see on top that are the bulk of the testing and commissioning. It's all the cables that you don't see in the conduits below ground. So a lot of testing, and it's not only the cables, it's also the connection, the devices. On this system, we'll have PA announcer, cameras, vending machine. There are more than 3,500 devices installed on the alignment. So those have to be connected, and each one of them has to be tested. So now and most of that testing and commissioning, you won't even know or even see that it's happening. What will be visible is the testing and commissioning on the trains. On the left-hand side pictures that you see there, it's a clearance test that's happening. So you see those weird pieces of cardboard. It's not cardboard, but you see those pieces attached to the train on the left-hand side, right-hand side, and everything. Those are the dynamic envelope measurement and templates that we use on trains. A train, when it goes at higher speed and when it's moving, has a different envelope. Also take into consideration the wear and tear on the wheels, the suspension. So all of that makes that we have an envelope that we are checking that there's no interference from anything. So as you see there, the trains went by the posts, very clear. There's no tree or no obstacle on the left or on the right. So that dynamic test and that clearance test went very well. So you'll see some of those. What you'll see as well is some dynamic tests on the trains, because what we're doing is we are, at the same time that we are conducting the testing and commissioning, we are training the drivers. So what you will see is very like baby step progress on those testing and commissioning. So you'll see trains going back and forth whole day, and they will accelerate and they'll brake. And for now, we are not even crossing intersection. Then we'll start to implement, and that allows us to test the traction power, the braking, the rails. Everything is tested at the same time. And that required, by the way, a whole lot of documentation and preparation to have all those tests as efficient as possible so that we can perform them in the minimum time possible. We then will start to integrate some traffic testing and signaling testing. So we will commission every single intersection so that we won't rely on flaggers to help with the traffic, the surrounding traffic on the alignment. Again, I'm I'm sure Isabel will touch base on this on her presentation. So again, what you'll see there is a lot of testing and commissioning. Those trains are very already very advanced train. Those are not prototypes. We have the same type of train running in Toronto. We have 204 of them, more than 25 million kilometers on all our projects. So it's a very good product, very fitted for the difficult condition that we may have in the winter. I mean, not this winter, if you accept those 2 weeks, but the previous winters were not as sympathetic for us. So again, very good trains, and you'll see all those testing going on 66th Street. If you, I don't know if there's any additional slide there. No, that's yours after. Yes. Again, my main message: always assume that those wires on top of the alignment are energized, and that will be my segue to Isabel.
Thanks, Jan. One of my favorite things about working with Jan is how his face lights up every time someone mentions trains or he sees the trains. So I'm going to take you through a little bit of train safety here. One of the things that we would like to note is that the Valley Line Southeast LRT system is different from the high floor train system that many Edmontonians are used to. So there are a couple of features that differ from what the public might have been seeing, for what you might have been seeing at the different intersections, or when you're just driving or being a road user or as a pedestrian. And so we just kind of want to take you through a little bit of key safety items here, that some will be applicable during the train testing time, and then others will also move into when the trains are actually running and commissioning. So the first one is to be aware of your surroundings and other road users, and to stay alert while you're on the road. So the Valley Line Southeast trains share the road with the trains. And here is a really great photograph to show an example. This is on 95th Ave. And this photo was taken last year, but it shows it so well because you see the track right in the middle of the road. And then on either side, there is traffic. So this is where the cars would be going. And with the high floor train system, there is designated track that isn't actually on the road. And so that's when you'd see the gates and the bells coming in, and they come down, and then you have to stop. With this one, you will be seeing the trains as you are driving on the road. And so we just ask that you be aware of your surroundings and other road users, and just stay alert while you're on the road. The next one is do not shortcut across tracks, only cross at designated pedestrian crossings. The low floor train system, just had mentioned in the first one, does not have crossing arms, gates, bells, or fences. And so there are designated pedestrian crossings that are for your safety. So anytime that you are crossing, we just ask that you cross at only the places where you are supposed to cross. If there's a pedestrian crossing, for example, here, you can just press the button or even wait for when it's safe enough to cross, and you are obligated, like you are told to cross, and then you can cross the road, and it'll be safe for you and for other pedestrians and other road users, and taking their safety into consideration as well. The next one is to always follow the direction of construction personnel and flaggers. So the construction personnel and flaggers are there for your safety. They're there for the safety of all road users, and they're there for the safety of our crews as well. We would like for people to reach their destinations safely, and we would love for our crews to also get home back to their families and their friends. And so when they tell you to stop, or they have a stop sign, if they tell you to go, we just ask that you follow their directions, even if if you're a road user or on two wheels, if you're going with an electric scooter rider, or you're in a car, or you're a pedestrian. These construction personnel and the flaggers are there for your safety. And so we just ask that you follow their directions whenever you see them while at our active construction sites. The next one is to always follow traffic and pedestrian signs and signals. There are a lot of signals that have been installed, are not yet active, but have been installed along the entire 13-kilometer alignment. And in some places, like for example here, and this is somewhere in, I think, 83rd Street, there is a stop sign that says no left turn. And so we just ask that the public adheres to just follow the signs that are there and the signals. This doesn't differ from majority of what you've been using or what you've been used to. When it's a green light, you go, and when they say no left turn on a red light, we ask that you don't take a left turn on that red light and you wait till it's safe to go with the green light. And the last one is to be aware that coming into contact with live overhead wires can lead to serious injury or death. So we ask that you keep all high-reaching devices such as ladders, outdoor banner lights, installation poles, drones, and remote-controlled planes away from the energized overhead wires. Now, just like Jan mentioned, our energized wires are at various locations along the entire 13-kilometer alignment. And so for the public safety, we ask that you always assume that these wires are energized. Coming into contact with them is very dangerous. We say it all the time because we mean it. And if you are sometimes maybe walking with the great weather that we're getting into or having right now, and you happen to see somebody who is maybe flying a drone that is close to these overhead wires, we ask that you just be a good neighbor and you let them know, hey, these overhead wires are energized and this is not a safe act for you to be performing here. There are other areas that they could do that and that are much safer away from these overhead wires. We just ask that you keep on passing that information around and to make sure that everyone in the public is kept safe. Safety is one of the things that we on the project make sure that we look out for each other, and we ask that the public also looks out for each other when you're out and about in your neighborhoods. And with that, we are going to move to questions. So there are quite a number of questions that have come in.
Isabel, if I could just interrupt for just a second.
Yes.
And you can go ahead and submit questions, folks, anytime right now, but I just wanted to circle back quickly on a couple of things and make sure there's some clarity on a few things. Number one is you're going to see a lot of communications from Transit's communications team. So that's going to give you an indication of what testing and commissioning is happening and where. You're also going to see an awful lot more as the time goes along here through the summer of these safety communication messages. So make sure that you're subscribed to our newsletter. Make sure that you're watching and following our social media channels. Check out our website. All of that information is going to be made readily available. When we talk about the testing and commissioning phases, and Jan talked about a number of those different phases, we'll be giving you notifications through those channels of when areas are having the overhead catenary system energized. And as we mentioned before, a lot of those areas already are. Please assume they are. But we'll give you an official notification when that happens, and that's just prior to the dynamic testing, or sorry, the clearance testing that Jan talked about. So as soon as the trains come out onto the track, there'll be another round of communications that goes out. So watch for that. That'll give you an indication of, the track is now occupied by the train, and be aware of that, be aware of your surroundings. The third one that'll happen is when we start to get really integrated with intersections and the traffic signals, when the train signals are integrating with those traffic signals. That'll be around communications. And I want to spend a bit of time talking about that briefly here, particularly for the area in the south, because 66th Street is really where this activity is first occurring now. You're going to be the first ones that will experience this. And I want to highlight 36A Avenue as the first intersection to be aware of. What's going to go on at that location right now is, as you can see if you drive by there, the signal's installed and the fixtures are bagged. You can't see the lights changing behind that. And that's a good thing. So what's happening right now and in the coming weeks is testing of that signal for the road work in conjunction with the train. And that's happening behind those covered fixtures for obvious reasons, so we don't interrupt traffic on 66th Street that's flowing north and south there. All of that testing is going to be completely certified and guaranteed to be safe and operating, functioning, communicating correctly, integrated with each other's systems before we take the bags off of those fixtures. When that occurs, there'll be plenty of communication to let you know what's happening. There'll be additional road signage added to give you we call it the starburst sign that says new, and it probably will say new phasing, a little sign tab underneath that sign on the roadway. So we just want you to watch for that. But I want to assure you that when those signals go live, they are completely safe. And it's really, really important that road users, be they pedestrians or cyclists or cars, all understand that as long as you follow the regular road rules, follow the signals. If it's red, you stop. If it's green, you're allowed to go. You will remain safe. And I bring that up, and it may sound obvious, but what's unique in Area 6 and in the 66th Street portion of the project, we do have right-hand turn lanes and movements across the track. So particularly for the northbound movement, if you're traveling north and you want to turn right across the tracks, there will be a dedicated signal for that movement. Please follow that. It's not like some locations where, in most locations, frankly, in North America, where you can turn right on a red. In these cases, you won't be able to. You'll have to follow that signal. And the reason for that is because of the potential for the train approaching from behind you where maybe you don't see it. So it's important that you follow that signal because it's communicating with the train, and when it's red, that's because the train could be approaching from either the north or the south, and we don't want you to accidentally cross the track while that train is crossing. I think I can turn it back to you, Isabel. I just wanted to really highlight that. It's incredibly important, and it will be a big part of the safety communications as we move forward.
Yeah, thanks, Alice. And so if you would like to submit a question or comment, just a reminder that if you're on your phone or your tablet, just at the bottom of the screen, there's a Q&A that you can tap there. And if you are using your desktop or your laptop to watch this presentation, you'll have to exit full screen mode and just go to the top left of your screen and you should see a Q&A. So we have quite a number of questions that have come in. The first one would be for Dallas. When can we expect to see the curbs being built on Connor's Road?
Oh, that's a good question. Connor's Road right now is the reconstruction of that roadway is effectively complete minus the top lift paving. So top lift paving, I should mention, will happen across the entire 13 kilometers. It probably, I think maybe 10% of that is done, and that's pretty typical. We wait to do that at the very end. And Connor's Hill is no different than most of the alignment. Before that top lift paving can occur, the final concrete barrier, so it's not actually a curb, along the, I guess we call it the south side of the roadway, or your right-hand side if you're going up Connor's Hill, or adjacent to the retaining wall, that curb is complete. On the other side of the roadway, separating the road and the track, because it's on a hill, there is actually a jersey barrier, a concrete barrier, very typical to what you see along, Yellowhead Trail or White Mud Drive, that has to get constructed first. And that will happen right away early in the spring as the weather is warming up. We will cast that barrier, allow it to gain some strength, and then very shortly after that, do the top lift paving on Connor's Hill. And you can expect both of those activities to occur in May and June.
Awesome. Thanks, Dallas. Next question is for Jan. How long should the ride last from end to end? So that would be from downtown to Millwoods.
So yeah, from 102nd to Millwoods, maximum 32 minutes. That's the contractual requirement, and that will be the maximum time to get from one end to the other.
Nice. Thank you, Jan. Dallas.
Isabel, probably a good time to mention here that these trains run at the speed of traffic typically. So the only time they really go, we'll call it fast, and I think it goes up to about 80 kilometers an hour, is on the elevated portions where the train is separated from track. At other areas, when it's driving along the side of the roadway and sharing the road right of way, it's running at the same speed as the cars adjacent to it.
Yeah, that's a good point to bring up. So when you see them traveling on the road, that's exactly what you'll see. They'll be moving at the same speed, or the designated speed that is allocated there.
Yeah.
Question for you, Dallas. Is there any further landscaping being done on the east side of the Woodville station?
East side of Woodville, yes. There's a portions of between the track and the concrete noise attenuation wall that still needs to be done. Very localized areas. I can't speak to the exact locations, but I know there is certain portions that'll have to get done, and that'll happen this spring as well. I should also mention, I think I failed to mention it before, one of the other main activities that's happening along 66th Street is to build the shared use pathway along the west side of the roadway. I want to encourage people to recognize that there's some fairly crazy slopes along there. Crazy is a weird word maybe to use, but it's fairly steep in some locations. So there'll be a little bit of localized retaining walls that'll be built there as well. And just because of the space constraints there will be some trees that'll be removed as well, but replaced with other trees and vegetation along there. But we'll be constructing that 3-meter wide shared use path all the way from 41st Avenue to 28th Avenue, which is, well, other than the portion from 31 to 28th Ave, that is brand new shared use path and sidewalk that hasn't been along that corridor. And that work will begin this spring as well and carry into probably about the June, July timeframe to finish that up.
Sounds good. Jan, how many kilometers do the new vehicles have to run as part of commissioning before they can enter into public service?
That's a difficult question to answer, and the answer takes several parts. The overall program doesn't have a number of kilometers. It has a number of points to check. And every single LRV has a number of kilometers to ride. But just like when you go to swap your tires after the winter, you know, after 50 kilometers, you're asked to go to the service and retorque. It's about the same thing. So every single train will run approximately 500-600 kilometers minimum. But as a fleet, we'll need to have some of the LRVs that will run longer and we'll have more tests being performed. Same for the tests that were done previous to being prior to being shipped to Edmonton and Kingston. And I can tell you that LRV 2 and 3 are already way over those 600 kilometers because those are the two LRVs that were used in the intense training and testing session that were held in the winter 2018-2019. So they already have more than those number of kilometers. Again, so there's not one unique question per LRV. 500 to 600 kilometers, something we're trying to achieve for all of them. But there are much more requirements that we will meet. Again, it's a global program and complete testing and commissioning program that we will have on this fleet.
Okay. Yeah, and I like how you refer to them as LRV 1, 2, 3. It's like you're talking about your children.
I have 26 of them.
Yes. What's the maximum passenger capacity for each of the trains?
So I mentioned earlier the 275 passenger. This is what in the railway norm is called the design capacity. So how it's calculated, you take the seat in the vehicle. So there are 78 of them, and you take the standing space. And in that standing space, you place 4 people per square meter. So that's how is within the norm calculated the capacity. It's and the number gives 275 passenger per train. Because I know there was another question if that was related to one train. The maximum capacity, again, same norm, is having 6 people per square meter. And you see that it does not really abide by the new health measures that we have in place, but 6 people, 6 person and passenger per square meter is something that is not unseen in some traffic. And then the capacity goes to, let me check the number, 374. So the maximum capacity of couple trains would be 700 people. And by the way, that reminds me, I forgot to tell when I said 32 minutes. During peak time, that will be every 5 minutes. You will have a train every 5 minutes at peak time. So you can see that with that type of capacity, even if you have a big event downtown, I don't know, like celebrating the Stanley Cup, you can still have 700 person every 5 minutes leaving the area to go on the southeast. So it's quite a heavy capacity to do that.
Awesome. Thanks, Jan. Dallas, I'm going to pair two questions here for you. Are all the shelters heated along the line, and is the artwork at Millwoods installed, or is that going to be installed closer to the opening?
Yeah, first question, yes, all the shelters are heated, and they're heated all the time during the winter conditions. It's obviously temperature dependent, but always when the train is in operation, they'll be heated. And the Millwood stop, I think that's the photos that we showed originally. Correct me if I'm wrong, Isabel, but I believe those are the ones that are installed right now in the shelters, yes.
Jan, how many hours on track have the cars been tested so far?
Same answer as previously. I don't have the exact numbers. I can't say more than quite a lot for LRV 2 and 3. And the other, I don't have the number, the exact number of testing hours in Kingston.
Okay. This would be for Dallas, is there a timeline to start and complete the intersections along 66th Street?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I was realizing as I had finished up my talk that I didn't really address that, and I do want to. So when we talk about the main roadwork type activities on 66th Street this year, northbound is largely completed, as you can see when you drive it. What we've got at intersections and between those intersections on the southbound lanes is two things. The entire area will get resurfaced, virtually the entire area. I'm not sure if it all will be, but virtually all of it. And that will occur when the intersection work is basically completed. Now, the intersections are a bit unique. The northbound lanes, first of all, are at a slightly different elevation than the southbound lanes. And those northbound lanes are tied into the elevation of the track. The track itself is very detailed design to make sure that the elevations rising and lowering and so on are integrated and properly crossing 34th and 38th Avenue intersections, but also just with all the adjacent properties and so on. It was one of the very first things we did in our design was design that elevation of the track. And the flow down of that is the elevation of where the northbound lanes are and then down to the southbound lanes at the intersections. And in order to make those safe and meet design criteria, the intersections will either require full depth reconstruction for the southbound lanes or something we call padding, and that is just really adding additional asphalt on top of the existing roadway to bring up the elevation. We're finalizing some of the last of the investigations of the existing conditions to confirm that our engineers are satisfied that if we were to just add asphalt, that roadway would meet its design life. And in some cases that we're hopeful that will be the case and the work will be fairly quick through those areas. But in some cases, we know that we'll have to do the full depth reconstruction. Now, in order to keep traffic running on all four directions with as little impact as possible, we will still have to close some of the lanes. So you can expect some of the 2 lanes to come down to 1 lanes for periods of time at 34th, 38th, and 41st Avenue intersections. And that's to allow us to do, for lack of a better word, little pockets or piecemeal chunks of the roadway at a time to achieve a full depth reconstruction in the zones that require it. And that will take a certain period of time as well. So you should expect active construction on the southbound lanes at the intersections for the first half of the summer, starting as soon as the ground thaws. Typically, the asphalt plants, as an example, open after the long weekend in May. So that allows the paving, but we'll start doing some of that preparatory work even before that. So in broad sense, May, June, and July is a lot of active road work on the southbound lanes of 66th Street.
Awesome. And now, Dallas, for your favorite question of every
guess what it is?
presentation. Take a wild guess.
When are we welcoming passengers on board?
Ding, ding, ding.
Right?
Yes.
Okay.
When are we welcoming passengers on board?
Believe me, if nobody asked it, I would have told you before the end of the presentation as well where we stand with that. So I welcome the question and thanks for asking it. What I can tell you, first of all, is that this is a P3 project and Transed is here for the long haul. We have a 30-year operating period where our operations group will manage and operate the trains that we're currently testing. We want to make sure that before we open the line to passengers, that all of the testing that Jan has talked about is 100% complete and that absolutely everything is in full compliance with our contract, but also ready for our operations group to have no hiccups whatsoever when things get running. And if that takes a little bit longer, we're willing to wait for that to happen. We want the line to be perfect when it opens. Now, I've given some hints along the way here of some of the activities that are taking through the summer and into the fall. And then when you put together the testing and commissioning that Janis talked about, and the length and the number of tests that have to be done, I can tell you that it's going to take the bulk of this year. So we are targeting opening of the line before the end of the year. And we're working really hard to make that happen.
Awesome. And so I have a question here for if somebody wanted to trim some of the, well, branch trimming, what would be the process if it's close to the overhead wires?
Okay. I would suggest, first of all, that if that was the case right now with the OCS cables being installed, and if Jan and his crews recognize that there is a current hazard, we would be reaching out to that resident to let them know already. So I'm not aware of any issues that way, so I would suggest that there probably isn't a hazard currently. But that's not to say it couldn't happen in the future. Trees obviously grow. The process would be to reach out to TransEd through our information line, and you can do that through info@transedlrt.ca. Go onto our website, and we have a phone number as well, and we will connect you with the appropriate individuals that will help do an assessment of whether or not that's a risk that needs to be taken care of. Typically, it would be handled through the Operations Control Center, which is a part of our operations team. They're fully active right now. They operate out of the facility at White Mud and 75th Street, or the OMF, or Operations Maintenance Facility. They're the ones that would be directly involved with any work that needs to be done on a private tree from a private yard that is overhanging onto city property and perhaps interfering with the overhead catenary system.
Great. So I'm not sure if this would be for Jan or Dallas, but there are video cameras that have been installed at the Woodvale station. Are there any assurances that can be made that these cameras will not view private properties?
I can give you assurances that they will not view private properties. Part of the testing and commissioning will be to ensure that. Jan, you can talk maybe more to the specifics of where they're pointing and what they're meant to pick up, but certainly they're not to be designed in a way and set up in a way that they would be shining into somebody's home and creating a privacy concern.
Yeah, and you hit it on the head there. The purpose is to have surveillance on the stops. That's our only concern. There's a big emphasis that was put on it and checked by everybody on the design phase. And part of the testing and commissioning that we're talking about is checking things like this, that it doesn't go and doesn't intrude any type of privacy. Access to those footage as well is very, very strictly restricted, and so you can be confident in that it will not intrude privacy in your property.
If I would suggest then to the person or the resident that gave this question, reach out to us specifically with your address through the information line that I mentioned a moment ago. Let us know of your concerns. We're happy to have a conversation directly with you. If you can even send us photos of maybe a camera that you're concerned about that you see being installed, recognizing it may not be even turned on or pointing where it's going to. But if you become concerned, just let us know. We'll do what we can to assure you that it's not going to create a privacy concern for you.
Yeah. And I'm going to put two questions into one here about the stops. So are the stops heated and open 24/7 or only during LRT operating hours? And the next one is, where will they do kiss and ride? Which are the kiss and ride spots?
Oh, that's a question I haven't had in a while, but I can answer, I think, both of them. The stops are heated whenever the train is in operation. Now, there is a period of time in the middle of the night, just for a few hours, where the trains aren't running. The shelters won't be heated at those points. And honestly, I'm not 100% certain, but I'm fairly confident that there is nothing that ever closes a stop platform. A person can come out onto the platform. There's no gates, nothing stopping somebody from going out there. But I would tell you, obviously, the train isn't going to arrive when it's not in the operating period. But effectively, the stop is open. But the shelters themselves are heated when the train is in operation and when the weather is necessary for it to be heated. Was there a second part of that question?
The kiss and ride. Kiss and ride stops. Yeah.
It's interesting. Frankly, I'm glad that you know about kiss and rides. A lot of people don't know that feature and what that really is. I get that question a lot of what's a kiss and ride. I'm going by memory a little bit here, but I'm pretty sure they're located both at 31 Avenue, adjacent to the the stop there, which is Grey Nun stop, and also on 38th Avenue adjacent to the Woodvale stop. So, and I think in both the 38th, I can't remember now. I think the 38th has it on both the east and west side. It's basically like a bump out of the roadway. It'll be appropriately signed, kind of like a bus pullout area, but signed to be for kiss and ride and in close proximity to the stops is the goal. And they're located not just at those locations, at others along the alignment as well.
Okay. And you touched on this a little bit earlier on for the 36A Ave. If you could reiterate what you had mentioned, if there was a question that came in on the right turn lane that if there's a one that crosses over the track, will there be a special signal
Right, yeah.
or arm to stop traffic?
So no arms anywhere on the alignment. There's no crossing arms, no crossing bells. So what happens in general terms, the best way to think about this is when the train is moving in the north or south direction along 66th Street, typically the cars are moving in the same direction. They have a green light just like the train has a green light. So when that's occurring, most of the train and the cars have the right of way. And if you think of it, the east and west crossing traffic at 34, 38, 31 are all in a stop condition. So if you're a northbound car that has the green light heading north and you want to make a right-hand turn, let's say at 31 Avenue or at 38th Avenue, you'll have a turn lane that you'll pull into. That's very typical. Normally, that turn lane would just meet up with the crossing street and you would just look to the left and make sure that it's safe to merge with traffic and go. And you wouldn't have to wait for a greener or a red light or a green light. You would just yield to the oncoming traffic coming from your left crossing that intersection. Now, said intentionally, you're looking left. That's where the hazard comes in. If you're looking left to see if vehicle traffic is coming, you're not looking to the right over your shoulder where the train could be moving. And for that reason, we put a dedicated signal. Maybe Isabel, if you can go back to the slide that shows that and put your mouse over top of it, if you wouldn't mind. There's a dedicated signal that will have a sign that is specific to the right-hand turn movement that will have the right-hand arrow red with a cross through it to say no right on red. You must wait until, or no right on the red signal is what it will tell you. When it turns green, that signal is indicating to you that you can now cross the tracks and merge into traffic onto the cross street, be it 38th Ave, whatever that is. Are you able to find that photo? It's in the testing commissioning second slide, I think.
Yeah, that would take me all the way back to the front of my presentation.
Okay. The point being, there's dedicated, I guess what I'm answering is there is a dedicated signal. Please follow that signal and you won't be able to turn right on red as you would in most intersections in the city. And we'll do a lot of special communications with regards to that. Likely additional flag people when that comes live and additional signage. So just watch for that and we'll make sure that it's well communicated. But hopefully I've made that clear to everybody on the call and that's listening here and you can help share that message with people. It is something that's pretty unique and one of the main safety messages that we have.
Question here on landscaping. Have any of the landscaping plans shifted from the original design presented for the west side of 66th Street?
On the west side of 60th Street, yes, they will adjust a little bit, and that has to do with the final locations of where the SUP shared use path fits and what trees will be affected by that. So if trees are coming down or the shift of the shared use path has to move over a little bit, the planting beds may have to move a little bit as well. The quantity of plants, quantity of trees won't decrease. If anything, it will increase because of the trees that have to be taken down. But effectively, it's substantially the same as what was designed in the last few years.
Okay. And one last question here is, you might have touched on this a little bit earlier on, what is happening with the pedestrian path between 34th and 31st Ave? And will the intersection at 34th Ave be completed?
Yeah, so I did talk about the intersections already, and there is work to do there over the next few months. I mentioned the full depth or the padding, bringing the elevations up and so on. So that work does have to occur still. And I've talked about the shared use path now, which is the sidewalk that's being talked about, I believe, here. And that includes that portion between 31 and 34th and goes even further all the way to 28th Avenue and starting at 41st Avenue way on the north. So that work is actively going on. There's some work right now, I think, happening with the street lighting, and we'll be excavating for that SUP pretty much beginning immediately.
Awesome. I think we've made it through all the questions that have come through here.
Excellent. Those are some great questions. Last chance if anybody wants to quickly fire one in.
Oh, we have a thank you. And oh, one more question coming in. Yes.
We're just waiting for it to finish typing.
Oh, the contact number, email for the safety concerns is actually on the screen right now. So our website is there and our phone number is 780-224-0964 and the email address info@transitlrt.ca.
So we'll leave that up for you right now. Might be pull out your phone, take a quick snapshot of that. But yeah, certainly you could just Google us and you'll find our website and all the contact us information is on the website. We really do encourage you to share the presentation when it gets posted to our website and to YouTube with your friends. The more people that hear this, the more information that gets out there, the more safe everybody will be. And that's really the biggest message we want to share is it's great to know the construction update and how that all works, but we really want people to start to change their focus to understand the safety aspects of interacting with the new low floor LRT.
A question, a really fun question for Jan. Do you have a favorite LRV?
Number one, the first one that went out of the line. And I can tell you because we were all there to visit on March 2018. And that was a big milestone for everybody. So definitely number one.
Can I answer that question?
Well, I guess you might. Yeah, go ahead, Dallas.
Yeah, I don't necessarily have a favorite one, but I kind of want to tell a story for anybody that's listening here. I know that it's late. You guys can log off if you want, but one of the things that we're going to be doing through the course of our safety education is posting some videos where you'll get to see my shiny face out on the stops and likely on one of the LRVs and just doing some actual virtual tours. Isabel and I had the privilege of doing that for some, I think we've had grade 1, grade 3, grade 6, a number of different schools and classrooms in the Millwoods area. Maybe some of you even have kids that were in that. So much fun though to just grab my phone and walk through the LRV and show it off to the kids, and it was a lot of fun. We interacted with a couple of the drivers. We were able to take the kids right into the cab, show them what can be seen right out through the front windshield, show them the very fancy and technical, I'm not sure the word I'm looking for, but basically you can see these touch screens right in front of them where all the camera views come to the driver. It's just really high class and really modern. And so much fun having those conversations with the kids and the students. And I have to point out, I've even received fan mail from them. So
yes, you did.
I'm famous.
I think, and I think we have come to the end of our presentation. So thank you so much to Jan and Dallas and Michelle for coming to share with us. Thank you to everyone who was able to attend today, and for anyone who is watching it at the as of the recording. There will be a survey that comes at the end of this presentation, and we encourage you to please fill out the survey. We do love hearing from the public to find out how we can do better as TransEd to give you the information that you're looking for. And if you have any more questions or you need any more clarifications and anything, our website again is transitlrt.ca. Our phone number is 780-224-0964, and our email address is info@transitlrt.ca. Thank you so much, everyone, and have a great evening.
Thanks, everyone. Stay safe.
All right.